I remind you one more time that when you think about trying to get people to change, you might try to force them, but in my experience, that's going to create some problems. You might try to convince them, and maybe they will begrudgingly acknowledge the strength of your logic. Or you might try to inspire them by using level 3 techniques. So what this means for you is that if you don't have a clear charter in mind, if you don't have a sharp vision, you may need to expand your skill set in terms of the principles we've talked about in previous segments. Remember that if you tolerate the current condition, you're actually perpetuating it. You're teaching what you tolerate. And then try to find win-wins for everybody involved. Remember Beer's notion that the product of dissatisfaction, vision, and process must be greater than the resistance or the cost to change. Try to become a friend to people rather than an adversary. Become an ally to help them get what they want. So I studied Aikido for a couple of years, and the core principle there is, how do I use another person's energy and turn it to my advantage? So you don't have to fight people necessarily. You can give them what they want, and at the same time turn that in a way so that you both get what you want. Which means you've got to accept and then channel the other person's point of view. So if you're trying to change the world around you, perhaps it means you may have to change yourself first in the way that you deal with other people, in what you have to offer other people, in the way you communicate and relate to other people, if you want to get them to come around to your way of thinking. Eric Hoffer once said that in a world of change, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned shall find themselves perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists. In other words, if you know the right way to do things, beware, because the world is evolving and changing, and what you know to be true in next month, next year, next decade may no longer be functional or relevant. In his book, Good to Great, Jim Collins relates a story of a high school women's track coach who made the statement that perpetuating mediocrity is an inherently depressing process, and it drains much more energy out of the pool than it puts back in. She said, I want my girls to have a great experience, to have the experience of being part of something absolutely first class. So you can make that decision with regard to your organization. What's your level of aspiration? Do you want to create something absolutely first class for your people? Or are you happy, are you satisfied, are you willing to just bump along doing good enough? Remember, we teach what we tolerate. So if you tolerate mediocrity, mediocrity is probably what you'll get. On the other hand, if you're overly demanding and intimidating, people may be resistant to your efforts. So the challenge is, how do you have a high level of collaborative excellence where you all agree with the standards you're trying to achieve? I mentioned Ari DeJuice earlier. His book, The Living Company, makes the point that the only real source of competitive advantage may be the capacity to learn.